This is Retirement Keys with Anthony Kangemi from Crescent City Retirement Group. When a part of your financial strategy is out of tune, your long-term goals, your retirement savings, and your legacy can all suffer. With many years of experience in the financial industry, Anthony provides his clients and prospects with the information they need regarding Social Security, retirement income planning, wealth management, and much more. Listen in as we address your financial concerns and provide helpful solutions to put you on the path to achieving your retirement goals. And now, here is Retirement Keys with your host, Anthony Kangemi.
All right, welcome to another show of Retirement Keys. My name's Anthony Kangemi, coming to you this morning with our co-host, Mr. Tony Shore, who we have every Sunday. And again, we couldn't do the show without Tony. He brings such a perspective, being that he talks to retirement planners, frankly, all over the country. And so he's just really one of the best. And so, Tony, thank you so much for being with us this morning as well.
Oh, Anthony, I'm going to blush here. That was quite an introduction. I don't know if I deserve all that, but it is great to be here with you. And you're the one, though, Anthony, that brings all the great information. And I love talking with you each week. I know that our listeners love tuning in each week. You hear from a lot of people who listen to the show, so that's great. And this has been a good week for me. Like we were talking beforehand, you and I have both been pretty busy. This is a busy time of year for us, and a lot of people want to make sure their financial ducks are in a row, right?
Yeah, they do, Tony. And, as we were talking earlier, we were talking about health issues, and I know we're going to be talking about taxes this morning, but health issues and medical issues in retirement also play a factor. And I know that you had mentioned that you're kind of going through that a little bit yourself.
Yeah, with my parents. Yeah. And, they call it the sandwich generation, where my wife and I have 3 adult children. They're all in college, so they're trying to wean themselves off of mom and dad, and we're trying to get them out on their own, but at the same time, they still need some help. And our parents are in a situation, at least my parents specifically. My mom has Parkinson's, so she needs full-time nursing home care. My dad wants to stay out on the farm where I grew up. It's the same farm that he grew up on and his dad grew up on. It was my grandfather. Yeah, it was been in the Shore family since the 1800s. It was homesteaded by our family. So he is reluctant to leave there, but he's not doing the best himself, but he still gets around, still drives. He just turned 80. But my mom with Parkinson's, these are just things you need to plan for ahead of time before you get to retirement. How are you going to cover long-term care? Where are you going to stay? What if one spouse needs it and the other doesn't? You do need to think about these things, and I know we've talked about them on the show in past episodes, but you have some really poignant things to discuss today. We're still going through those 20 questions that you have that people need answered before retirement, and I think that's key. And the listeners tuned into a good week this week to hear the show, because this is a great list, and I think we're going to go through the last 4 things. And it starts with RMDs. Explain what an RMD is, Anthony, and why that's important.
Sure. So required minimum distributions. So with your retirement money, let's call it pre-tax, whether it be a 401k or some type of retirement plan, 403b, or maybe a traditional IRA, if you have pre-tax money, meaning funds that are in a retirement account that have not been taxed yet, then at some point, money will have to come out of those accounts. And of course, it'll be taxable income when it comes out. Well, the required minimum distributions, or RMDs, are just that. It's the point where you have to start taking a required minimum distribution from those accounts. And so it's real important that that's done properly, because there's a penalty, a pretty stiff penalty, if you don't take the funds out as you're supposed to. So in a retirement plan, Tony, when we're thinking about distributions, we have to consider the required minimum distributions when the time arises. And so again, it's income that has to come out of these accounts. Uh, and of course, that income is taxable at that point.
So you've got to ask how these RMDs can affect your tax strategy because you have to take them and they are taxable from these accounts like a traditional IRA or 401k. So obviously that can very much affect your tax strategy, but there are things you can do to plan for that, right?
Absolutely. So just to be, real clear about how you would plan for that, is that you would look at what the distributions on those accounts are currently. And then with the right programs, right, and software, you look and see what those RMDs are going to be in the future. So, as an example, let's say you're pulling, $12,000 out of your retirement account, and when it defaults to required minimum distribution, it jumps to 25,000. So this is just an example, but that to us would potentially be a red flag because we're saying, okay, we're pulling out, 1,000 a month or 12,000 a year in this example, but now it really hikes up, it doubles when it defaults to RMD. So we're really not looking for that scenario. We don't want to jump the income up to where potentially we could be in a higher tax bracket. What we're really looking to do, Tony, is structure the distribution where we can maintain an efficient tax bracket now, but then when the accounts default to RMD, there's a very smooth transition, if you will. In other words, there's not a big spike going up and there's not a big decrease either. So we're looking for a smooth transition. So when you think of a distribution strategy or money coming out, right? You're distributing the funds out now. The idea is that you have a very efficient, again, we're looking macro tax planning, not just year by year, but also what are the tax implications over a period of time. And so what you're looking for, again, is a very strategic distribution strategy whereby the money's coming out of the taxable accounts. And when RMDs take place, there's not a big spike in income. So we don't want to overpay in the taxes. We're trying to use these funds as efficiently as possible.
Well, yeah, you have to be aware though of these things and you want to make sure you're being tax efficient, and that is why you need to have a team of professionals like you have there at Crescent City Retirement. You need to have a financial advisor who's a fiduciary, who's going to look out for your best interest and look at the big picture, because a lot of times if you have a CPA, which you need to work with a tax professional, of course, but they're just looking backwards. You also need somebody who's got the big picture in mind. And RMDs are critical. You want to avoid the penalty. There's a very high tax penalty on it, even though it's been lowered from 50% to 25. It's still one of the largest penalties in the tax code. So you have to get that straight. And I know that's something your clients that you work with don't have to worry about because you've got that all set up and make sure that they're not going to miss those, right?
Absolutely. And let me just say one final point about this, just to illustrate uh, really the same point, but to illustrate it a little differently. It almost seems reasonable, and I've certainly talked to people, in the past that may not need the funds from their retirement account. So they feel that it makes sense to just let it defer, let it grow. If we don't need the money, why take it out? And although that seems reasonable, it really does. Why take money out of an account and pay taxes on it when if you don't need it? I mean, it seems reasonable. But really, you know, you're looking at just that maybe 1 year of a tax strategy, a very micro look and not a macro look. So, you could defer, 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 but then when the default to required minimum distributions take place, then all of a sudden, if the income really spikes up, you end up potentially paying a lot more in taxes on that money than you would have if you would have clipped along piece by piece along the way and had a more efficient distribution strategy. And, Tony, let me just say on this note as well, thus the reason for Roth conversions. So, even if the income's not needed in the, in the home, if you're in an efficient tax bracket now and the default to RMD is going to be what it is, Roth conversions can be an excellent strategy for taking the smaller tax bite now, moving it into a Roth IRA, and then, of course, as you know, that money grows tax-free, not only for the recipient but also for the beneficiaries. So, again, tax planning, tax strategy, distribution planning, that's a big part of all of that.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. And obviously, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I thought RMD stood for really massive donut, but that's just, but Anthony, that is just because I'm always thinking about food. You know that. So, so for our listeners out there, it is required minimum distribution, not really massive donut like I thought. But,
No.
but moving on, what percentage of somebody's income should be guaranteed in retirement? I know you've talked about quote unquote guaranteed income, or money will be there to cover your needs in retirement. Is there a certain percentage that should be guaranteed and a certain percentage that can be at risk?
Yeah, so there's a rule of thumb. I would say though that ultimately this is something that the our clients really weigh in on. When they think about, okay, we're going to need so much income in retirement, and that's our base, after taxes, after federal taxes are paid, after state taxes are paid, after our healthcare expenses, what's our take home pay? What do we need to net every month to maintain our lifestyle? And so that is our retirement income, our income plan. Now, what percentage of that payment, that income, should be guaranteed, and what can be more variable, right? So, for instance, Social Security, that's in the guaranteed income side. Pensions, people have defined benefit plans, structured income, annuities. This is all structured income on the income side. Where it might be more volatile would be money in the stock market, right? So you can draw dividends. Now, we even like dividends, like them very much. And if you have a portfolio that's generating dividends and you're just drawing the dividends out of the portfolio, that can be considered, structured income. So I guess, but there's other assets in the stock market that are more growth oriented and not necessarily income oriented, where it's more up and down, right? So we wouldn't consider that portfolio to be a guaranteed income source. So, but to get back to the question, what percentage of my income should be guaranteed in retirement? We shoot for 80% here at our firm. We shoot for 80% of the income should be on the guaranteed side. Now, but again, this percentage is really, we have some clients that are very, risk averse, and they want more like 90 or 95 or even 100% of their income to be guaranteed. Other folks are okay with more volatility as it relates to their income. I will say that it's important because if you're pulling money out of the wrong accounts at the wrong time, meaning the portfolio's down and now you're having to rebalance or sell shares at a lower price to generate the income, that's not the position you want to be in. So that's why, Tony, when we think about a retirement strategy, we think in terms of really three, buckets of money. Liquidity, meaning emergency money, and that certainly is invested very short term for money to be available for emergencies, liquidity. Then you have an income bucket. That's the structured income. That would be, again, Social Security, pensions, annuities, dividend paying stocks, structured income, and then growth, or the growth bucket. And then that can look different, right? That could be a little bit more aggressive, more long term. We want growth, but we need to make sure our income is taken care of, and we need to make sure we have carved out for liquidity. So, with all that said, if there's a big drop in the stock market, which, let's face it, if you're going to retire at 65 and we're planning retirement plans to age 100, that's a 35-year time horizon. So, it wouldn't be accurate to say that there'll never be ups and downs in the stock market over that period of time. Obviously, there'll be some peaks and valleys, right? And so in those, and so we know that. So we just want to make sure that if the market takes a dive, that we still have our structured income in place, we have our liquidity in place, and yes, the growth bucket will be a moving target. It can be up and down, but it really needs to be isolated from our structured income plan. So to answer the question, we think 80% is the proper percentage to have on the guaranteed side. But again, once we go through this exercise with our clients, and depending on their situation, they may be more comfortable with less on the guaranteed side, and some would say more.
We need to talk about, if you have an advisor, which you definitely have to have a financial advisor in your corner to navigate all the different issues with healthcare costs, taxes, inflation, your retirement accounts, creating a retirement income. But how often do you need to review where you're at or review your retirement plan with an advisor?
Yeah, Tony. So that is a really good question. As you know, that's question 19
Yep.
in our top 20 questions that someone should ask before they retire. How often should the plan be looked at? How often should you review with your retirement advisor? And the answer to that question is we have three defaults here: quarterly, semi-annually, and annually. And so depending on the client, and depending on, we look at the plans quarterly here, but depending on the client, some clients want to meet quarterly, again, some semi-annual and some annual. So that's really the three different time frames that we set as a default. But let me just say this: it is extremely important to have, whether it be quarterly, semi-annual, or annual reviews, it's extremely important to have them and to maintain them. And so, when you have a full retirement plan with your retirement planning firm, it really is a partnership that you are embarking on and going into retirement, and all to and through retirement. Okay. And so you want to make sure, and that's why we have this as a question. You want to ask the retirement planning firm or the advisor that you're working with, how often are we going to meet, and what are we going to do in those meetings? And obviously, those meetings need to look at the original retirement plan. You need updated numbers, updated performance reports, and make sure that your retirement plan is on track. That is critical. It really is. And let me just say, and the reason why I really want to spend a minute on this is because it isn't just, you've got a plan, you set it up, you've got money invested, you start your plan, and then you stick your head in the sand for 3 years and then go back and look at it. That's really not the most efficient and effective way to maintain a retirement plan. Tax laws change, people that pass away, People have additional needs, maybe healthcare needs that have come up. So this is a relationship that you're embarking on. So I would just encourage our listeners, when you're interviewing retirement planning firms and when you see their retirement plan that they're offering, they should offer you a mock retirement plan. You should be able to see what type of planning they're doing. So that's important. But then also the relationship and the follow up and the reviews that are going to take place. You really want to make sure that they're geared up for that, because we do talk to so many people that have been with advisors that say, well, yeah, they put me in this annuity or they put me in these accounts and I haven't heard from them again, or every now and then I'll get a birthday card, but there's no, so that's not true, obviously, for everyone, but there are, you just want to make sure that the firm that you're working with is comprehensive and they really do have a review strategy and a review system to where you're going to consistently be coming in the door and reviewing your plan. So that's real important. But in
Yeah.
our firm, Tony, it's quarterlies, semi-annuals, and annuals.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. So, a lot of people are wondering, well, yeah, but what does all this cost me to work with, to have a retirement plan? What are the typical costs?
Yeah. So
That's
it's a great
question 20.
question. And, costs can be from initial setup of the plan. So you could pay a cost for that. You could pay, so you would want to know, if you're going to build me this retirement plan and all that, we've discussed inside of our plan, what is that going to cost? So that could be an initial planning fee. So there could be a cost there. There could be a cost for assets under management. So what are they, investing in? And are there fees to manage these portfolios? Of course, there's always going to be some type of management fees. And so the question is, what percentage of that are we going to pay? Typically, there's not just an advisor fee or a management fee, but the funds themselves inside in the portfolios could have fees in there. And so we need to look at on the fund level, if there's fees, if there's a management fee or advisory fee for assets under management, there could be fees there. And of course, there could be planning fees or setup fees. So these are the typical fees. And I'll just say, when we do our fee analysis, we're looking at the fees that people are currently paying. And because at the end of the day, you want to be efficient with your fees. I mean, the fees could really be an erosion to the assets if they're, higher. I mean, I've seen fees, Tony, upwards of 3.5,
Ooh,
to 4%.
wow.
For advisory fees and some of these, types of investments. Certain
Yeah,
types of annuities can have really
sure.
high fees. And so you really just have to, know what the fees are and make sure that you're not overpaying. But again, it could be planning fees, it could be advisory fees, it could be actual fund fees, investment fees inside the models themselves. So, but getting that fee report and saying, because it's a great question, how much money is it costing me?
Yeah.
And to be very transparent about that and very clear about that is got to be part of the equation.
Yeah. And that should be talked about right up front. Otherwise, run. Don't walk
Well,
from
sure.
that person.
I mean, let
So,
me ask my audience, our audience, this question. Do you, when you purchase anything or when you do anything, you go to the store, you go to the mall, you order something online, you purchase a car, do you know what you're paying, right? I mean, you know what the
oh, yeah.
fees are, you know what the
Yeah.
cost is.
Yeah.
So there really should be as transparent as that. You
Yeah.
should know exactly what your investments, your planning is costing you and your investment advisor is charging, and it should be very, very clear and very transparent.
Well, sure. And I think that's really important. Now, we're out of time for today's show. So, really quick, before we go, let our listeners know the phone number and web address where they can get a hold of you, Ann.
Absolutely. So it's Crescent City Retirement Group. We thank you so much for joining us today. You can go online to Crescent City Retirement Group. All of our archived radio shows are there, and a way to get a hold of us. Or you could just simply call 504-828-2171. I do have a special offer I'd like to make. So if you enjoyed the show, if you would like a second opinion, we are offering a full retirement plan absolutely free of charge. So the planning fees that someone might pay to build a retirement plan, all of the retirement planning documents, all of the strategies are all put together for our radio audience. You have to take advantage of the offer. And so I'd like to make this special offer. Thank you so much for joining us, and I really hope you do take advantage of the offer.
All right. Thanks, Anthony. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of Retirement Keys with Anthony Congemi. Thank you for listening to Retirement Keys. Don't pay too much for taxes or retire without a sound income plan. For more information, please contact Anthony Congemi at Crescent City Retirement Group. Call 504-828-2171 or visit the website at crescentcityretirement.com.
All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Federal Medicare Program, or any other government agency. Calling this number will direct you to a licensed sales agent.